Hi, I'm Peter Machin, and I'm the director of this project, the Autism Project, as it's been labelled. I've wanted to do a project around autism for a great many years as a parent of somebody who's autistic. My background is using physical theatre, movement and language. And when I met my partner, who's got two children, one who's diagnosed with ASD, and then her daughter is now on the pathway. She had a book on the shelf called Neurotribes, which I kind of started to read. But because of some of the things in there about Hans Asperger, which I knew he'd always been championed as somebody who was positive as far as autism was concerned, I started to hear these things about, well, no, he was connected to the Nazis, so I wanted to find out more about that. So I went away and found this book called Asperger's Children by Edith Schaeffer, who I've been in contact with, and she's been a great support. She's been fantastic. She's based in the States. And after reading that book, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to work with a company of actors who were diagnosed with autism. I knew that I wanted to look at their personal kind of experiences, but I wanted to look at it through the lens of the history of the Asperger diagnosis and how that is connected to autism.
My agent put me forward for it. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little apprehensive, but she's the one who talked me into this because it would be seen as a chance to explore what being on the spectrum meant to me, and also how not everyone in history has had the chance to define them being on the spectrum for themselves, and I thought that was important.
You just don't really see much being made at the moment about or for or around autistic people, particularly autistic adults.
I was interested in the book. I didn't know anything about where the origins of kind of autism, and so when I found out that it came from kind of it was sort of coined in this in the world of the Third Reich, that really struck me.
Well, I knew very little about the actual history of Asperger and Spiegelgren and what happened in Vienna. So I thought it would be interesting to be a part of a project that dealt with that particular slice of not really often shared history, undertold history, and also the fact that it was an entirely autistic cast. Never worked with a bunch of other people like me in that regard for. So that was actually quite a cool part of being part of it.
I was really interested because I knew a little bit about the context of what the book is and what the book's about. So I really wanted to explore that, and I was actually quite excited that there was someone else who actually wanted to do this, and I'd never heard of anything like this ever being done. You know, the shows that are out there are kind of quite stereotypical. They're written by people that don't know as much as they think they do about this subject, or they don't allow people who are actually from this world to have their say. It's kind of put upon them.
Projects I've been on in the past, when people know from the off that I'm on the spectrum, they are expecting something very particular from me, and if I don't bring that, then I've not fit their preconceived, ill-informed mold, and then there's no freedom there to be you.
Oh, it's been lovely, hasn't it? It's been so nice.
It was fun to do something that was really movement based.
It's been an emotional journey, but in a great way.
People think that there's got to be certain things in place to deal with people that might have, you know, ASD. But really, it's not about that. It's just about being human, empathizing with one another. And I'd say this week for me has been really unapologetic, and it's really creative and constructive.
And free as well, just like you're just yourself.
And it's all at a very comfortable pace.
One of the things that's been interesting this week for me, we've had a dramaturg in the room, Genevieve Curtis, who's been fantastic. She's kind of operated in some respects as an aide-memoire because she's brought a lot of the history into the room. She did a fantastic thing on looking at the terminology used from the time. Which has been really interesting because when we've created certain scenes, that same terminology is still around. she's been great in challenging and bringing in, like I say, that idea of the past, which has really brought the past and present kind of back together again, which is what essentially this piece was kind of all about.
I mean, I rarely these days as an adult, as an artist, don't have often a chat with a room full of other people who share my diagnosis, or on the way to getting that diagnosis. Like, I've never had those kind of conversations. So actually, in many ways, it was quite cathartic and healing.
I'm very grateful to have been able to share a space with people who've been so open. Everybody's been very open about their experiences, and everybody's at a very different stage of their journey, which has been fascinating.
Genuinely, this is the least alone I've ever felt in a rehearsal room.
It's made me think more about how important it is to find the positive and the joy, and not just the negative, because obviously the subject matter that we're dealing with all the stuff back in, you know, World War II and what was going on in the Spiegelgrund and all of that is so harrowing. How do we also then bring the element of actually the light and lovely side of it?
One of the most uplifting and brilliant things about this week has been how supportive the cast have been of each other, but also of me, because often as the leader or facilitator of a particular project, there is a space between you and the performers, but we've very much been working together, and it's been a real collective effort. It's been fantastic.
I think it's got the potential to be a brilliant show.
I think it's something that would do well on tour, regionally, continentally as well. I think this would do very well in Europe.
I think it should be everywhere. It's kind of, it's a sort of brilliant, interesting mix of like, well, the work we've been doing so far of like kind of like verbatim stuff, stuff from our own experiences, and then looking at it through the lens of this kind of untold story of where it kind of came about. Like I don't think many people know about the history of autism.
What I guess I'd like to see, maybe not where I necessarily see it, but where I'd like to see it is how do we market this as one thing and get people in, and then we go bam, like here's you know, some real stuff you've got to think about, but ultimately leave people thinking. I think that's what I see. I see it being something to make people think.
Sure.
There's one thing I've learned from this week is that people with autism, people who are autistic, you know, can very much thrive in life as well. There's a huge joy aspect to it, and that's empowering, and I think we need to spread that.
It could go so much further physically, because there's this big aspect of play, but also just something I've seen from being with the other actors in the room is just the level of understanding amongst us all, I think, could just really be explored more physically, that sort of idea of community.
Yeah.
Because we are all, I feel like we're all in quite a similar headspace.
I'm really hoping now that we can push forward. There are some very strong, solid ideas to how this can develop into a piece of theatre. And there's more work that I kind of want to go away and do. There's lots of ideas for things that I can actually get down and write. There's lots of ideas physically of what we can play with and what we can kind of discover again. And I think the idea of how the history and the present are married together is becoming a lot clearer.
When you consider the origins of the diagnosis and the terminology used in the book from, you know, the Third Reich times, still used today, and there's so many people that don't know that, it's really important that everyone is aware of that, of the origin, the true origin of it, and to challenge people's preconceptions as well.
You can meet someone with autism and not even know. It's not what you think, you know. Things that were written, a lot of what we understand, or a lot of the stereotypes that people just mindlessly spit out about autism today, come from research done in Nazi Germany in the 40s that hasn't since been built upon at all.
I didn't know about a lot of this stuff before we even started, you know, and it's so important.
Yeah, I guess.
I want them to look at themselves and watch themselves and learn and just be educated and humbled by these beautiful people telling this very real story.
As much as we like to think we are making progress, there are still gaps in people's understanding of what autism is, because it isn't what they think it is.
So I guess I think for parents to not see it as like a sentence for the child, and I think for more understanding from everyone of what it really means and is.
Yeah, I really just want to challenge people's idea of what disability looks like. What autism looks like, exactly.
I feel in some ways it's like a superpower, you know? Well, that sounds so cheesy, doesn't it?
No, it's true.
But in some ways that you're kind of, there's things that you are good at that it's almost impossible to explain to other people unless you are it. Certain qualities and things that you can do. And I think, you know, it's like something to be like, wow, that's amazing that we have people that can do this. This is really good.
Autistic people are people, and they come in all shapes and sizes, just like everybody else. And that's the thing that's coming through more and more, is that voice of the autistic person, because it's an invisible disability, does need to be heard. It's been done in a very particular way. I know that there have been other companies of autistic performers that have made things, but I think they've approached their story from a very particular way. I'm really hopeful, and I also think there is a necessity for a piece like this that does need to be seen by as many people as possible. It needs a very broad and big audience. You know, often there is a danger of preaching to the converted in theatre. I think that the nature of this piece could challenge even the people that we often think are maybe intellectually on board with ideas around autism. So I'm hoping now that we can move forward and that we can create an ensemble piece of theatre that can be seen and accessed by as many people as possible.